Okay. I think this would be good. Hang on. Alright, chat, we've never done one of these before. But I absolutely love this person. I think they put out great fucking videos. So what I think we're gonna do for the next react, we're gonna take a look at a drinker video. Critical Drinker put out a video today about the TV show Firefly. And I love Firefly. And I think the Critical Drinker is a great content creator. I love his stuff. So let's see what Drinker thinks about Firefly. Shall we?
Back in the heady days of 2002, I was still a young and optimistic teenager, instead of the horrifying burned out husk of a man you see today, and I was flicking through the TV channels one day when I caught a commercial for a new show called Firefly on the Sci-Fi Channel, made by that guy who did Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Now, I really like Buffy, but I have to admit, this Firefly thing didn't really grab me. It looked like some weird mashup of cowboy movies and the kind of low-budget sci-fi action shows that were all the rage at the time, and I remember thinking, I don't get it. This looks weird and silly, and I don't know if I'm meant to take it seriously or laugh at it. And because I already had Farscape and Stargate SG-1 and Star Trek Enterprise to keep me occupied, Firefly just kind of passed me by. And by the end of the year, it had been cancelled anyway, so who cares?
Yeah,
Just another...
oh man. The cancellation of Firefly? What a fucking blow that was to fans of the show. Like, if memory serves, it got canceled for a really stupid reason. I can't remember, like, the cast have talked about this before. And I can't recall exactly what the rationale was why Fox canceled it, but Fox, like, was known for doing this to shows. Yeah, Fox was really bad about doing this back in the day. They would like, throw shows out there, and they put it out there, but they didn't put out there as, like, a big Fox show. I think they were putting everything into, like, one of their other shows or multiples of their other shows, and Firefly was just kind of on, like, in the background for them. But the thing is, Firefly was actually more popular, but they was like, no, we want to promote this show, and airing it out of order, that was a mainstay on Fox. I cannot think of many shows that aired around this time period with Firefly. What was the other one? Suckers, the one with Carl Urban, where he has an android partner. Like so many Fox TV shows, during their, like, in their first season, almost, that was it. Yes, so many Fox shows. During their first season, they would air the episodes out of order, and it would really screw things up because things would not make sense. They'd have something happen in an episode, and they go, "Hey, remember when this happened?" And if you as the audience are going, "No," and then 2 episodes later, they would air that episode where that thing happened, and you're going, well, "What the fuck? They said this already happened," and it was all sorts of screwed up. Like, that was a mainstay for Fox, is doing out of order. It was stupid as hell, and I have no fucking idea why the execs thought this was a bright idea, but it was a mainstay of back during this time period that they would do that.
aborted sci-fi show with grand ideas that never really got off the ground. Guess I dodged a bullet with that one, eh? Now, I'm telling you all this because people like me are the exact reason why Firefly never found the audience it needed and got unceremoniously cancelled by a network that never really believed in it in the first place. But having finally caved in and watched it with Mahler like 20 years too late, I can honestly say that is now a genuinely big regret on my part. Why? Because Firefly is a fucking awesome show with some of the best character work I've ever seen in a project like this. A fully fleshed out world of adventure and vibrant cultures brimming brimming with potential, writing that's light years ahead of the dull, flaky sludge we're subjected to today, a cast of superb actors at the top of their game, and most importantly, a genuine passion from everyone involved that you can feel in every single scene and conversation. They really were trying to create something special with this show, even though seemingly everything was working against them, and there's something truly admirable about that kind of glorious failure.
One thing I do have to say. This Firefly was when the whole Whedonism thing had not been done to death. Because this came out around the same time as Buffy, and this was when the whole Whedonism way of writing and dialogue was new. And that's why when you see the show, this was before you're seeing this the kinds of dialogue that you saw in Buffy, that you saw in Angel, that you saw in Firefly, that you saw in Dollhouse. You didn't see it everywhere like you do now. Whereas so many modern day projects are seen just absolutely fucking obsessed with the Whedonism style of dialogue, and it's become grossly overused. Back when Firefly came out, that kind of dialogue was fresh and interesting and actually showcased heart and was not the hollow shell of what it once was. So, yeah. Yeah, it was like, yeah, this was, yeah, you're right. I think it was when Angel was winding down, and obviously Joss Whedon was looking to move on to something else, and, he did Firefly, and I think he did Dollhouse after Firefly, if I'm remembering the chronology of it. And, doesn't Whedon have an H? Yeah, Whedon. Yeah, you don't pronounce the H. You don't say Wheaton. You say Josh Wheaton.
The show is set a few hundred years into the future, where humanity's formed a single world government called the Alliance and spread out into the galaxy to colonize nearby star systems. Some of these tried to break away from Alliance control, which resulted in a galactic civil war that the separatists, known as Browncoats, ultimately lost. Now the outer colonies exist in an uneasy peace, where technology and culture have devolved into a kind of Wild West frontier mentality, and law and order is maintained by whoever has the biggest guns. It's in this world of danger and possibilities that we're introduced to Malcolm Reynolds, a former browncoat turned smuggler, and his ragtag crew who live and work with him aboard the Serenity. They spend their days taking on dangerous jobs that other people won't do, transporting illegal cargo, trying to avoid Alliance patrols and the cannibalistic space pirates known as reavers, all so that they can scrape together enough.
Okay, possibly unpopular opinion. I don't like that they showed the reavers in the movie, in Serenity. The reavers, I think, were more effective as a narrative tool for Firefly when they were this unseen boogeyman, that all you saw of them was the aftermath left behind from one of their attacks. I think actually putting them front and fucking center in Serenity was a mistake. And I mean, it was they did an interesting storyline in Serenity, how the scientists on that one planet were the ones that created the reavers. But I still think I still think that they would have been better to leave as this nightmare boogeyman that you never see on screen, but you see the damage and the hell they can bring about. So for me, it was a mistake for them to reveal them like that. They did it great in the TV show. You never saw it in the TV show, but then they showed them in the movie because I guess they wanted to amp things up. I don't know.
money to keep the beat-up Serenity running. But things take a sudden change for Malcolm and the others when they're hired by a young doctor to transport his sister River, who's on the run from the Alliance and is, well, a bit strange to put it mildly. Clearly there's more to her than meets the eye, and as the season unfolds, the crew begin to realise that River might just hold the key to changing the balance of power in the colonies. Now, as I'm describing it here, it probably sounds like a fairly generic space adventure show, the kind of thing you've probably seen a million times before, but the devil, as always, is in the detail, and this is where Firefly really comes into it.
That was, I think, one of the few times you actually saw a reaver in the show. If I'm not mistaken, this is a reaver ship. And I think that's the only thing you saw of them. If I remember, it's been a long time since I've seen Firefly. But I'm pretty sure that's a reaver ship. They were scared shitless of it. They managed to get away from it. And that was it. That's all you knew about it. That was a good way to use the reavers in the TV show. Is to, like, catch glimpses of them with their ships. Just know that everybody's terrified of them. And that's it. Have them be the Baba Yaga of the Firefly.
The detail, and this is where Firefly really comes into its own. First up, there's the characters. There's 9 people aboard the Serenity, all with their own unique personalities, goals and motivations, many of which conflict with each other at times, and their various perspectives and ideals are what form the backbone of Firefly's dramatic arc. There's Zoe, Malcolm's second in command, an old war buddy who's always got his back, her husband Wash, the ship's talented but slightly flaky pilot,
love Wash.
Kaylee, the engineer who somehow manages to keep the Serenity running despite all the punishment that it takes, Jane, a gun-toting meathead who's more interested in profit than teamwork, Book, a kind of travelling preacher with a mysterious past, Inara, a high-class escort who hitches a ride on the Serenity to get from job to job and has a will-they-won't-they relationship with Malcolm, and Simon and his sister River, who are on the run from the authorities while trying to reconnect with each other. And here's the thing, every single one of them is interesting, likeable, fleshed...
Rough, I was too. Like, with Wash, okay, I kind of got it. Wash was, they just narrowly escaped the reavers and he was a casualty. I did not like how they killed off Shepherd Book. That disappointed me because Shepherd Book, if I remember correctly, Book was like, they alluded to the fact that he was actually some kind of like militaristic badass and did something so horrible he gave up his life to become a preacher. So like you had this really interesting potential backstory for him that obviously the TV show never got a chance to explore, but then in the movie they killed off Book without him being able to do anything. It was disappointing to me the way they did it. You had a crush on Kaylee, Falcon? Kaylee was cute. She was very cute. He was an operative? Okay. Yeah, you never had a chance to they never had a chance to work with that. What are you talking about, Leo? What are you talking about? Well, River was the victim of experimentation. That's why she was so spaced out. I forget exact. Oh, you're quoting Book. Okay, I don't remember that line. Yeah, Kaylee was cute, and Inara was very sultry.
Out and complex. You get a good sense of who everyone is and what matters to them within like the first half hour of the first episode, but the more you learn about them, the more layers of history and personality get built up. Watching them spark off each other, trading quips and insults, reacting to ideas and situations in different ways, and even just hanging out and having dinner together, it all just cements the realization that, wow, they really did put a lot of thought into crafting these characters. And if you were to ask me who my favourite is, I genuinely struggle to to answer because they all have something to recommend them. Jane is hilarious with his simple-minded pursuit of profit and gratification, never passing up a chance to indulge himself, but there's also darker moments where he's actually forced to confront the fallout of his actions, and you can see how much it shakes him. Malcolm's the consummate leader, always cool under pressure, smart and calculating, but also free-spirited and adventurous, willing to take risks with his
I don't know. Would you guys categorize Malcolm as smart and calculated? I'm not sure I ever really got that feeling for him. I got more of a feeling of Malcolm was good at basically coming up with plans on the fly. He was very good at improvising. That's the feeling that I always got. Like, he was smart. Excuse me. Smart? Yes. Calculating? No. Improvisational? Yes. So he was very good at, like, when presented with a problem, he would be able to come up with something. And it was very smart, but it wasn't calculated. It was just, he was very good at adapting and improvising in a situation. Yeah, Leo, yeah, I suspect that Joss Whedon actually came up with the idea for Mal and based him kind of largely on Han Solo. It would not surprise me at all if he said that he basically took a lot of inspiration from that character in order to make up that.
Ship and crew, but fanatically loyal to the people under his commands. And believe me, he is not a man to be trifled with if you turn against him. Holy shit, a smart, capable and brave male lead who's also respected by his crew? You can tell this show wasn't made today, that's for fucking sure. And he's played to absolute perfection by Nathan Fillion, who apparently considers Mal the best role of his career. And frankly, it's pretty tough to argue with it. Then there's Kaylee, who I genuinely think might be one of the most lovable characters I've ever seen on TV. She's a brilliantly talented engineer who can fix almost anything, but she's also feminine and endearing and, well, nice. Her quarters look like a teenage girl's bedroom, and in one episode where she's...
God, I remember this episode where she was like gaga. She was like, a big part of this episode was she wanted to go to, it was like a debutante ball or something, and she wanted to wear a pretty frilly dress. That was a huge part of the story. The shindig, yeah, it was like I'm calling it a debutante ball, but it was probably more like a hoedown. Or not a hoedown. No, that's not correct. That's not correct. It was like I'm not sure what the upper class Southern parties used to be. But yeah, she wanted to basically be the quintessential Southern belle at this party. And one thing I do remember is when she got her dress, and when she went to this party, she was grossly out of fashion. Everyone else was wearing much sleeker, sexier dresses, and she was wearing this big, poofy, literally, cotillion. Yes, thank you, Kaibo, cotillion. And yeah, and when she was wearing this, not Victorian, but what was that age? Basically just like Southern belle dress, looking totally out of place. And Mal came in and danced with her, and like had a dance with her, and told her how she was the most beautiful woman at that dance. And the two of them danced on the dance floor, like it was just the two of them, and she ended up having a wonderful night. It was great.
Oh, nice. Her quarters look like a teenage girl's bedroom, and in one episode where she's forced to wear a dress to attend a formal ball, she's delighted by the simple joy of just dressing up and looking pretty. If this was written today, she'd be some big burly lesbian with a crew cut and a bad attitude, obnoxiously complaining about how dumb the men around her are. We really did not appreciate how good we had it back in the day. But it's exactly this kind of nuanced character work, the ability to constantly surprise the viewer without ever feeling forced or mean-spirited, that helps to remind me that yes, Joss Whedon used to be really fucking good at this kind of thing. He gets a lot of flack nowadays for basically being the instigator of the cringe-inducing Marvel humour, and I've probably even done it myself, but I think that's doing the guy a disservice because most of the time it's not really his work that's the problem, it's writers of lesser talent awkwardly trying to imitate him to the point of parody.
Yes.
Whedon himself.
Yes, and that's what I was talking about. It's the Wheaton-isms, not directly from Joss Whedon himself, but it's just this type of dialogue, particularly in Marvel, has been done to fucking death. Yes, he directed just the first Avengers movie, and then everyone after him in every Marvel project has tried to imitate him. And so the dialogue that, no, Revens, he did not. It's the people that tried to poorly imitate him ruined Hollywood, or at least the MCU. Because that's the problem, is instead of trying to find their own style, they're like, oh, everybody likes Joss Whedon's style, we're just gonna mimic that across the board and do it absolutely to death and not even do it well. And thus now everybody hates the Whedonisms. And they blame Joss Whedon for it, which, as Drinker said, it's unfair to do so. He's not the one writing these scripts. He's not the one directing these actors with this dialogue. It's people copying his shit. And now nobody likes it.
Himself once described this show as 9 people staring out into the darkness of space and seeing 9 different things, and really I think that's the perfect summation of what Firefly represents. It's a show about perspectives, different ideas and mindsets, and how they conflict and work together. And of course, I can't talk about the characters without discussing the Serenity herself, which is basically the show's 10th character. She's a beat-up old freighter, a bit like the Millennium Falcon, designed not just as a vehicle but as a home for the crew, and it
do you remember this episode? Hang on.
A bit like the Millennium Falcon, designed.
I'm pretty sure it's this episode right here. Which if I'm remembering correctly, this episode they just shot here was when the Serenity ran out of power. Everyone except Mal jumped in the escape pods, leaving Mal behind to try and do something with the Serenity, and he was running out of oxygen. Because they had no power. Yeah, boy, that was a tense episode because they actually showed him getting weaker as the oxygen started thinning out. And yeah, that was, I mean, they're all great episodes, but that was a great episode.
Just as a vehicle, but as a home for the crew, and it has what I can only describe as a coziness to it that was so unique to that particular time in entertainment. Nowadays, most sets are designed to be dark and moody and cool, and they all come across as so stark and nondescript that they're almost depressing to look at.
I remember that part,
The
Leo.
Serenity is the exact opposite, cobbled together and lived in and rough and ready. There's little details and Easter eggs everywhere.
We don't do modular
the sets
repair,
were all
Ross.
designed to connect together because Whedon really wanted the audience to know the layout of the ship and where everyone was at any given time, and it's this desire to create a usable, believable space that just adds to the feeling of a show that had a lot of love and care put into it. Obviously,
they don't
not
do this
everything's
anymore.
gonna hold up quite as well.
Like, look at the set design. You don't see this anymore. You don't see this anymore. This level of creativity, attention to detail, where you will build giant practical sets like this that bring the audience in and let the audience know, okay, we're here. Know where they are, have the sets being unique, have them being practical instead of everything on a green screen. And Kaibo, I suspect that and I would equate that, like how you don't like the Tam siblings, I would chalk that up to the fact that the series did not give a chance to really work with them. With only one season. You had 9 characters. And the show was only just getting started. There wasn't an opportunity to really delve into their characters to make them more interesting.
Had a lot of love and care put into it. Obviously, not everything's going to hold up quite as well as the writing. This was a show made over 20 years ago on a not particularly big budget, so needless to say, the VFX are pretty janky by today's standards. There's a lot of recycled locations and props, many of the one-and-done sets look pretty bare bones, and sometimes the action set pieces are reaching for something that's a bit beyond their grasp. But you know what? I don't give a shit. I'd take a rough and ready show like this over some visually spectacular piece of soulless, corporatized trash any day of the fucking week. Ultimately, Firefly's unique fusion of sci-fi space adventure with big thematic overtones and down and dirty Wild West aesthetics with gunfights and bar brawls and old-timey dialogue was definitely a bold move from a creative standpoint, but in retrospect, it was probably a bit too far ahead of its time for people to really understand what it was going for. This problem, combined with a pretty crap time slot and a studio that never fully got behind it, meant that Firefly never found the audience that it deserved. Fan petitions and online campaigns eventually persuaded the studio to make Serenity, finally giving Whedon the budget and resources to bring his vision to life on the big screen, but even that wasn't enough to save the show, and it was consigned to history after just 14 episodes. And that truly does suck, because I feel like the whole history of this show was dogged by those two most terrible words. If only. If only the studio had gotten behind it more. If only idiots like me had been open-minded enough to give it a chance back in 2002. If only they'd stuck with it for another season. If only there hadn't been so much competition. If only. And when I think about all the absolute dog shit, brainless, soulless, pointless TV shows we get bombarded with today, that somehow keep getting renewed for season after season, that spend more on a single episode than Firefly got for its entire run, it makes me genuinely sad because little by little, we're losing that improvisational spirit and the creative drive that made shows like this possible in the first place. We really didn't appreciate how good we had it back then, and probably never will again. And ultimately...
And what he's talking about with Firefly is not just Firefly. When Firefly came out, this was back during an age when studios took risks. Like, productions actually took risks coming up with something. What Joss Whedon did here creating Firefly, this was a risk. And it was a risk that should have paid off. If not for what Fox did to it, Firefly was a risk that should have paid off. Then we don't get these kinds of risks anymore. Yeah, because shows like this don't cost billions of dollars for one season. They worked on a tighter budget, so the writing had to do the heavy lifting, not the special effects. And that's that's a big problem, is that the modern TV show is relying at least 50% on special effects to carry the show. And then maybe they'll do like 20, they're relying on special effects, they're relying on casting, and then about 25% is on good writing and good storytelling. During this period in time, the writing did the heavy lifting. You could have a great looking show and a decent cast, but if your writing was not up to snuff, the show was dead and gone, and there was no, we're gonna renew it for a second season because, we want to promote the message, or what have you. People recognized good writing back during this time, and they applauded it. And typically speaking, it was rewarded, and that's what would make studios take risks to try and put out shows that the studio that the parent studio might be like, I don't know about that. That's kind of risky, but then they get convinced to, and the show ends up being a hit because the risk pays off. Nowadays, everything becomes so fucking formulaic. You with so many of the shows these days. A lot of people, you can see so many people that do like that where movie TV criticism is their job, like they're YouTube critics. They're predicting how the show is going to go before it ever launches, just by listening to cast interviews. They're predicting how the show is going to happen. Which means that the studios are basically just doing everything safe. Everything's got to be safe. We can't take risks anymore, because if we take risks, well, we might lose a little bit of money. Which is exactly what the studios did back during this day. They took risks, and yes, sometimes you lost money, but sometimes it came with great rewards. And with those great rewards came money, and also came shows and movies that continue to live on in people's memories decades after they watched. You're not getting that these days. You're not getting the memory, the only thing, we are waxing poetic about Firefly. We're talking about the episodes, things that have happened in the episode, what we liked about them, how the characterizations, why we like the characters, so on and so forth. Think about the modern day shows that we see. Think about how much we actually remember about them outside of it was dog shit. We don't really remember too much about the characters. We don't really remember too much about the stories. We just know that when we saw them, they were shit. They didn't make any sense. Or the writing was terrible. Or that all they did was push a message. That's the memories that we're taking with us on the modern show, for the most part. And we not being able to predict the ending of it is something that has long passed. Because now the whole subverting expectations has become so mainstay. We as the audience know, okay, they're gonna try and subvert our expectations. So instead of doing this, it's gonna do this, and then guess what happens? That's exactly what occurs. TV and film are so far removed from back during this day.
Firefly is just another sad example of wasted potential, of missed opportunities, of what might have been. So you know what, Firefly? On behalf of myself and everyone else who should have believed in you but didn't, I'm sorry. You deserve better than you got. And in the end, we're the ones who lost out.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.
And that final freeze frame on Kaylee's ass. Bravo, Drinker. I approves. Yeah, Merlin, I don't either. I don't watch TV either these days. There's nothing good worth watching. Well, of course, Jules Sate has got a very lovely ass. Of course she does.